book of Revelation fascinates people. Even people that aren't Christians get enthralled with the book. And why is that? There's lots of reasons, I suspect. But one of them has to be that it's filled with these graphic, dramatic images. Every time you turn a page, there's a new one. Some are thrilling. The riders on horses and the angels flying through the air and all that kind of stuff. Oh, it's just thrilling. Some, though, are downright chilling. A dragon that can knock a third of the stars out of heaven, an army of demonic frogs and things like that. And some are just gory. I doubt if next Sunday morning anybody's going to read the passage for scripture reading. I doubt if anybody's going to read the passage about birds goring on the flesh. Beautiful, dramatic, gross, all kinds of images. And just about the time you think Revelation has exhausted its supply of images, well, it springs a new one. And we had a new one come up in our last lesson, chapter 17. The great prostitute, the harlot of Babylon. And almost immediately they introduce us to this image, and then we see her ruin. The woman who lives in luxury is also living in immorality, blasphemous, wicked, depraved, and all of her wealth and all of her status is immediately brought to ruin, so that all the world mourns her passing. But they mourn from afar off. There's not anybody really brokenhearted over it. But this is apocalyptic literature. And so we have to ask, who is this woman? Because it's not that there was a certain woman in John's day, and this is her. No, she is a symbol of something. She represents something. And so as you, like with all the other images, as you study the book, you got to ask, who is this harlot of Babylon? Well, like the beast, and like Satan, and like Jesus even, the writer gives us what we need. He gives us the clues. He gives us the identifiers. And so automatically we begin to see some here. She is called Babylon. Babylon, the Old Testament empire, city, nation that conquered the Jews and destroyed the temple and carried them off into captivity. She's equated with Babylon in the history of the Jews. She has 7 heads and 10 horns and covered with blasphemous names. We automatically know who she's allied with because that's the beast, that's Satan. She's rich, she's powerful, she has gold and precious stones, enormous wealth. And she is the contrast to a character that is to come. As we get to the end of the book of Revelation, then we have the bride of Christ who comes out of heaven adorned beautifully. Well, this harlot of Babylon is the contrast to the bride of Christ. The bride of Christ represents God's people. So the harlot of Babylon represents somebody, something of that nature. You may still be wondering, and if so, you're not alone. Chapter 17 and verse 6. At the end of it, he says, "When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, 'Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns.'" Now, so the beast is an extension of the woman, if you will. Who is this beast and the woman that rides her? He says, the beast which you saw once was, now is not, and will come up out of the abyss and go to his destruction. So this beast is from the past. But he's coming again. This beast she rides, this characteristic of her, if you will, of the image, is something that used to be to the people that John's writing to. It's not there at the moment, but it used to be, and it's going to come back. Then he says, verse 9, this calls for the mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. Now another attribute of hers. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, The other has not yet come, but when he does come, he must remain for a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is an eighth king. He belongs to the seven and is going to his destruction. So there's these seven kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, another is yet to come, and then after him is an eighth one. And that's the beast. That's the beast that the woman rides. So who are they? Well, once again, if you remember back to our earlier lesson, you start with Augustus. And who are the emperors? Well, there's Augustus and Tiberius, Claudius, Caligula, Nero. That's the 5 who once were, who are no longer. Vespasian, the one who is ruling, and Titus is the one who is going to come and rule for a little while. He's number 7. And after him comes the 8th head, the 8th beast. And that's Domitian. And it says Domitian is of the 7. What's he mean by that? Well, the idea is, and even in the day, the thought was that Domitian was somewhat the incarnation, the reincarnation of Nero. Nero, who was the great persecutor but was gone, had returned in Domitian. The persecution had returned. It was like that of Nero, that infamous persecution that was to return. That's the way they would think in the day of Domitian. That's the way they would talk. John lays the foundation for that right here. The persecution of Nero was going to return in the 8th beast. He was of the 7. He was like Nero. Then he talks about 10 horns, smaller nations, vassal states who own their power to Rome. Think of the Herods in Jerusalem. They called themselves king of the Jews, and they were kings as long as Rome let them be. They're going to lead to Rome's demise. Rome had trouble controlling all those extended vassal states. Verse 15, then the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. The beast, these emperors, are going to lead to the destruction of the woman. For God has put into their hearts to accomplish His purpose by agreeing to give the beast their power to rule until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Now, who could that be? If you were John, or if you were one of the inhabitants of Patmos, and you said, this woman, this great prostitute, who rides the beast of all these Roman emperors, particularly the 8th beast Domitian, is the great city that rules over everything. Who would they be talking about? Once again, this is another graphic depiction of Rome. The great city. The great city of Babylon is Rome. Rome as a persecutor of God's people, particularly in the time that's coming in their day, still to come, the persecution that's going to come in the time of Domitian.